welcome to Kankakee Podcast, where we talk about the people and places of Kankakee County. I'm Jake LaMore, and today we have a special guest joining us who's a local musician, local songwriter, who's offering up a very unique blend of genres and a distinctive stage presence as well. His sound is what he calls weirdcore, and it draws inspiration from a variety of different artists like Gorillaz, Weird Al, Eminem, Insane Clown Posse, Mindless Self-Indulgence, and Coheed and Cambria. Now, with 2 albums and an EP under his belt, Dubble is set to release his latest album, or actually I should say it is out now. It's called Kaleidoscope, which promises to be a genre-defining journey filled with energy, creativity, and surprises. He's also gearing up for a indie rap showcase at the Paradox Emporium in Bradley this June. We'll get into that as well, where he's going to be sharing the stage with other talented artists from the area. So please join me in welcoming Dubble to the podcast.
Hello, everybody. It's great being here. Thanks for having me.
So do we want people to know your other name, or is that a name that shall not be named?
Well, to be honest, my biggest following is on my name, Facebook, and not my... it's easier to put out my music through my actual profile than it is to try to fish people into my actual musical one, because I always catch more people. I make friends through like the rap communities online and just random people at work and stuff like that, and they always say on my personal profile. So I pretty much front that as my main music profile, but for the sake of professionality, I also have an artist profile.
I feel like you have to, right?
Yeah, you have to.
Yes, I hear you on that. So yes, Dubble, a.k.a. Shane Whitlock. So yeah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, sir.
And so great to have you here. We were chatting a little bit before we started, and it was just, you mentioning my old band, The Projection, and like you were there for some of those shows. It just really kind of brought me back into those moments. And, obviously those were some of the best times in my life. And anytime I get to meet someone from that time, I always just automatically get excited. And I'm like, oh, so they know, they know. Because it wasn't necessarily like, I'm not talking about, oh yeah, my band was amazing. It was nothing like that. Just the scene, just being around the scene at that time.
It's nostalgic.
It's nostalgic. Yeah. So I guess I just get a drop of that nostalgia.
And then just a drop.
I just instantly get excited. It's cool to know that you were there in the scene around that time in the Kankakee area. And obviously you're still in the scene.
Yeah.
So
this time I'm pushing myself a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say, because at that time you were just a fan.
I was a huge supporter. Yeah, I would almost call myself like a street team for a lot of artists, because it's just, I've always loved music. I may not have always been able to play it or create it or produce it or anything, but I've always wanted to see my friends and people who were in that whole like thing. I wanted to see them
thrive.
Yes.
Yeah. So you yourself, when did your musical journey start then?
So it started, I'm going to get real technical with this.
Go ahead.
When I was maybe about 8 years old, I got my first Walkman. CD players, I think, were out, but I had an R2-D2 Walkman, and they
made those?
Yeah, it was the coolest thing ever. I was looking at it online; they're worth like $90 now, and it was probably like a $5 thing when I got it.
Do you think they put those out when like Star Wars Episode 1 came out?
I'm almost positive. Yeah,
that would make sense.
That would have been like 2001. So I think it actually.
Well, that could be because Episode 1 came out
1999.
Yeah, that was 99.
I
Thank you,
only know
Andrew.
that because I've been told I was in my mom's womb when my dad forced her to go to see Phantom Menace.
My God.
Yes. I was 9 when that came out, and I remember my parents allowed me for my birthday to bring a friend to the movie theater with me to go see it. And you want to know what's funny about that? His name was Shane.
Oh, really? I've only met like 2 other Shanes my entire life, and one of them is my manager at work.
Yeah, his name was Shane. He was my one friend I could bring to go see Phantom of the Menace.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I saw that in theaters too. You know what? Now that we mentioned, talk about it, it might have been right around then. But
either way, 2001 wasn't that far from 99.
No,
so it was right around
close.
that time.
It could have been free promotion before the movie even came out, for all we know.
Right. Anyway, so you're going back, you get this R2-D2 Sony Walkman.
Yeah. And I was given a cassette for Weird Al Yankovic's Dare to Be Stupid album. And I fell in love with the song Yoda. It was just, it's a parody of the song Soda. And it was, I mean, at the time I didn't know it was a parody. It was catchy. And all the songs on that album just stuck to me. And then I found more of his music and I started getting more and more into it. And because of my obsession with Weird Al, I would automatically, whenever I heard like any track online, any song, or not online, on the radio or any song anywhere, I would create a parody for it. I would start seeing alternate lyrics and stuff like that. And the habit of doing that with these songs for like ever since like being a child ended up creating an unintentional talent for freestyle rap. Because now whenever like if a beat comes on, I started freestyle rapping probably about 3 years prior to my actual recording of the music. And I could just naturally just come up with stuff on a beat, and people who were around at the time were kind of amazed by it because they're like, I didn't know you could rap. And I was like, oh, I didn't know either, to be honest. And
it's just probably, it sounds like it's something you were doing in your head for years until you actually started doing it.
Like, oh, this is a thing?
It's like all those years you were practicing and you didn't even realize you were practicing.
Right.
You were just, and then one day it just finally made its way out in the world, right?
That's right. So in about, I want to say 2017, I got curious. I wanted to start freestyle rapping to more of a, I don't want to say a crowd, but not just alone in the bedroom or in the car. So I found this app called Battle App, and it was a battle rap app where you would do a 30-second like track to like popular instrumentals and stuff like that versus another person. And it was a video thing. And I did that for years, getting better and better. I made all kinds of connections. I networked, and they had a leaderboard on there that I was dying to be on. It was like the top 100. The closest I got to number 1 was like number 8, but I was happy with that. Like that was really good.
That's there were
thousands and thousands of people on the app at the time.
You're talking about it. Yeah, I was going to say, you're talking about an app that is worldwide.
Yeah. It was
pretty impressive.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. But eventually that app ended up, I don't know what happened exactly, but it just started dying, and now it's not even on the app market anymore. So once I noticed it was starting to die, I started getting views and stuff like that. I decided, you know what, it's about time I buy a microphone, and I stopped rapping on my phone, and I started buying instrumentals or making instrumentals and actually try to put some artwork together, because I've always been an artistic person, though I was always, doing this, creating the raps in my head and doing the parodies and things like that. Aside from that, the artist in me was always drawing. I was always drawing, painting, and unfortunately, when I was in school, I didn't always pay attention, but I was always doodling on my homework. So I got a skill there for that. And I found a way to turn that surrealistic artwork that I would create into a surrealistic world in the world of music. And that's kind of where we've gotten today. It was just me working and pecking away at that like artist in me, because if I don't create, then it claws and scrapes at my insides until I make something. So that pressures me to create something new each time.
It's funny you say that, because when I was listening to your latest album, Kaleidoscope, as I was listening to it, I was actually picturing like drawings going along with the lyrics, like almost like a music video playing in my head, but of someone drawing these things that you're rapping and singing about, not necessarily in a particular song. It was just kind of like throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I definitely, I was sitting in this podcast room with my headphones on, listening to the album, and there were parts where I just started laughing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that's the Weird Al, like,
it pops up so randomly.
I was like, that's the Weird Al influence right there.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved that, because I grew up with Weird Al too. I think the first album that I really dived into of his was Running with Scissors.
Oh, that was the first album. Okay, so it's funny you mentioned that album. That was the first album that I actually went to go see Weird Al live on tour.
Man, I'm so jealous. I've still never seen him live.
Crazy thing is, the man that took me was with my woman at the time, but it was Nick Huffman. Nick Huffman was like, we need to take you to see Weird Al. And I know you've had him on the podcast before. He was kind of like he was an uncle figure in my life for a long time. So,
okay.
Yeah, he's partially responsible for like my come up in the interest of music and stuff like that.
How did Nick influence you?
Well, not just with the Weird Al thing, but it's just like his motivation, and he's considered, I mean, he's my aunt's ex-husband, I guess. And he's always been around, and I would always talk to him about my music when I started doing it. And he was like, you need to come in and talk to me sometime. You need to come and talk to me. And it was like over and over again. And finally one day I went to go talk to him, and he started telling me all these different things about different artists like G.G. Allin and like, I don't know, Motley Crue, I think. Just these artists that they didn't necessarily have the best music, but they were completely themselves, and they showed everything about themselves on stage with no filter, completely raw. And sometimes you don't have to be the best artist in the world to be a great artist. And after all that, he was like, show me some of your music. And I was like, okay. And at the time I was skeptical about showing it to him because I was still working on production quality and things like that. And I showed it to him, and he was like, he didn't say anything. I played it, and he like started talking, and he started saying stuff about how like you need to make music that is going to grab people's attention. He was basically kind of like nodding at like, your music it's getting somewhere, but it's not quite there. You need to do something more with it. You need to be more yourself. And I don't know, that has always stuck with me. And just that drove me to keep creating weirder music.
Weirdcore.
Yeah.
Is that kind of like, in that moment you're having these conversations with Nick Huffman, is that kind of in your head where weirdcore kind of came about? Or when did the whole idea of weirdcore come in?
Hey, weirdcore, weirdo core. It's all because honestly, I think it's the Weird Al influence. So many times I've been told by people I've been told I look like him. If I let my hair grow out, it curls.
Sure.
I'll get a whole Weird Al thing going for myself. And on top of that, people have been like, yo, you sound like serious Al Yankovic. And I was like, what do you mean serious Al Yankovic? It's like, you rap about stuff that's sometimes very serious in tone, but sometimes you have a tendency to sound a little like Weird Al in the ways you enunciate words or like the comedic value you throw on top of it. So I always had a problem like finding a genre for myself, because when I say I'm just rap, then people just assume, well, I don't want to say people assume, but it's almost mistaken to be something else. And my music is a little bit more than rap, but I can't say it's indie music either. So I've defined my entire genre with this term weirdo core.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, rap, like any other genre, has really revolutionized itself, you know, to where rap is so different to what it was when it first started.
Yes.
You know, I mean, you think of right now today in the mainstream, you think of people that are rappers that don't sound anything like the rap you and I grew up with as kids, or even like our parents grew up with as kids. I often think of Post Malone, you know, like he's apparently a rapper, but I never really thought he sounded like one. But it's just how things have evolved, and things are constantly evolving.
Constantly changing.
And so like rap has just blended with so many other genres. And I guess that's nothing new. That's been going on forever, right?
Right.
I mean,
sampling is basically the beginning of all that. Is they would take samples from the strangest songs in the world, songs you may have never heard of, and turn it into an absolute like jam.
Yeah. Well, you think of Run DMC and Aerosmith, right? Like that often. Exactly. How could that's
or
just a
Ice
perfect
Ice Baby and Queen.
Yes. Yes. It's been going on really since the dawn of time, actually, when you think about it. But I can't remember where I was going with that. I guess just to say that you're talking about, you try not to use the word rap. You just say
I like to say I'm an artist.
Yeah, just because. and you hear that in Kaleidoscope, and I know that's kind of the name.
Yes.
You came up with Kaleidoscope because of all the blending of
everything,
of
everywhere,
genres.
all at once, basically.
Right. Like, you know, towards the beginning, I feel like when you start listening to the album, you're like, okay, it sounds Eminem, kind of Insane Clown Posse kind of feel. And then you, as the album goes on, you get to songs like Bipolar, and you're like, oh, okay, this is like Gorillaz. So you're starting to get like that alternative rock, rap feel to it.
A grunge rock song.
Yeah, Depression, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I was going to say, then you get to Depression, and it's, you know, a lot of guitars. It sounds again like 90s alternative hard rock, kind of, you know, screaming. But then I think, is it Mania that comes on after?
Oh my gosh, Mania, Small Town Anthem.
Yes.
That's a lot of people's favorites right now, just because of how stupid it is. That was inspired completely by, there's an episode of South Park where they're like, they took our jobs. So I was like, you know, me and my friends were doing that at work because like I had traded my position, not a position, but I was doing something one day and another guy came and took over and I just started yelling that at him and people were dying over it. And I was just like, I wonder if I could put that in a song. And I went home and I found out a way to basically put that, like, it's not the exact same sound, but that like the thing into a track.
It's so funny because when I was listening to it, I kept thinking, this reminds me of something, but I can't figure out what it is. And it must have been like a South Park kind of.
It's like if South Park made an Insane Clown Posse song.
And have they ever done that? Because I feel like they should, because they're missing out. You know, I feel
Trey
like
Parker and Matt Stone should hire me.
I hope they're listening to this and they do hire you. But yeah, Mania, it's got banjo in it. Like the other name for the song is Dumb Small Town Anthem.
Yeah.
So it was really inspired by South Park. It's not necessarily a reference to any town around here.
No, it's because South Park is considered a small town.
Yes, it is.
It's in the theme song even. So I was like, I wanted to make a South Park reference without saying South Park because it's not really a direct reference. It's just like
inspiration.
Yeah.
Well, you nailed it.
Thanks, man.
And then the last song on the album, which is like considered a bonus song, we were talking about that before we started recording. Nana Slamma?
Yeah, Banana Slammer. Banana Slammer.
Yeah.
I can't say it. Banana Slammer. There we go.
It's pretty much you're talking about Donkey Kong.
That's exactly.
And like Donkey Kong Country.
Yes, sir.
And I got so excited when I heard the Donkey Kong Country reference because so my son, who's currently 7, we've been playing Donkey Kong Country on Super Nintendo, and we've been trying to beat the game, and it's so hard. Have you ever actually beat the game?
I could beat that game in an hour.
Really?
No joke.
It's so hard, dude.
I've played through it 100 times since my childhood. Donkey Kong Country 1, 2, and 3 are my favorite games like on this planet.
I think the one we're playing, I think it's the first one.
Who are the 2 main characters? Diddy and Donkey Kong?
Yes.
Yeah, it's the first one.
Okay. Yeah. I guess I forgot there were a couple after that.
You should definitely go and get Donkey Kong Country 2.
Is it easier?
Honestly, yes.
Yeah?
Yeah, but
I just feel like it was so hard. I couldn't get past, like, I'm trying to think of where we're stuck at right now. The episode where you're in the mine and there's like the alligators and it's like stop and go where you have to hit the traffic light to stop it and then it turns green and then like the alligators come after you.
Yeah, I think it's called Stop and Go Junction. Is the name of the level.
Something like that. That level is so hard.
It's probably, oh man, never mind. Let's just say it's probably the hardest level in that game, but you haven't even made it to the ice world yet.
That's what I'm saying, because I think
stupid barrels always go.
Andrew, you ever played Donkey Kong like Donkey Kong Country?
I beat the first Donkey Kong Country on my Game Boy.
Oh.
And then I stopped because it
you got to play it on Super Nintendo.
It did.
The Game Boy.
It was really hard.
On Game Boy Color or Game Boy Advanced?
I think just I lied to you. It was my DS when they first made the DS and it took Game Boy games.
Yeah.
I think it was a DS Lite.
So it was actually Donkey Kong Country for the Game Boy Advance. Because there's a version called Donkey Kong Land that's very similar to Donkey Kong Country, and it came out on Game Boy Color.
Got it. See, I think it was just the standard one. I got it from GameStop.
Okay, man. I never, I only had the Pocket Game Boy.
That was the first Game Boy I ever got.
Yeah. And so that's just like literally the same thing as the original Game Boy. It was just they shrunk it down to where. So if you've never seen the original Game Boy, the thing's like a brick.
Oh yeah,
it's just huge.
It stood. It was a war. I can't remember which war it was. I think Gulf or something like that. But a original Game Boy was blown up with a mine or something like that.
And it survived?
It survived. It still turns on, and you could still put games in it and play it. It is melted, all the way melted, but it still works.
See, that's all. That's hilarious. But yeah, the version I had was just the same thing. They just shrunk it down to what they call the pocket size.
Yeah.
And I was always jealous because then it wasn't long after that the Game Boy Color game came out.
It was like a year after.
Yeah, and my friends had that, and they're like, "Oh, well, I've got the color," because the Game Boy Pocket was not color. It was
whatever,
just,
man.
I just felt so uncool at that point. Yeah, we're just peeling back the layers of our childhoods right now and getting super nerdy, but I love this because we don't really do that often on the podcast. So this is very important stuff we're talking about here.
I listen to a lot of podcasts and always love the episodes where not like only they have the voicemail ones, which are always really cool, but the ones where they just sit back and BS a little bit.
Well, and Shane was kind enough to bring by a t-shirt and then actually a CD of Kaleidoscope. And the reason why we're getting into Super Nintendo so much is because obviously the song Donkey Kong Country, but then there's actually a image of the Super Nintendo
yes, sir,
on the front cover of Kaleidoscope.
Yes, sir. So, one of my favorite systems ever.
Yes, same. And I think it's probably just because that was the first Nintendo system that my brothers and I ever bought.
Yeah, it was the first one that really have good two-player gaming on it too.
Yeah, that's very true. The others weren't, or the original had two-player options, but it wasn't.
It wasn't anywhere near as like cooperative as the Super Nintendo.
No,
became.
It was like, okay, player one has a turn, and then if player one dies, it's like, okay, now player two,
right?
It's your turn to play. You didn't like play the game together always,
right? Yeah, there's like unless you're playing Contra or something. That was a rare occasion, you know.
Yeah, you've played Estival Festival,
yes, sir,
last year, and then how many have you been? Do you perform a lot, or is it just kind of like here and there?
It was here and there. I have plans to perform a lot more because I'm just now starting to feel like my music is at a quality where it's worth pushing real hard. And before I was more focused on bettering myself in the whole like concept and genre and production quality and stuff like that. But prior to this upcoming show, I've only ever done one real show, and that was the Estival Festival, and then like a large handful of open mics. And so this is the beginning of my career, if you can call it that.
Well, I've never listened to any of your work up until Kaleidoscope, and I was very impressed. So I can tell, even though I haven't listened to your previous releases, I can tell you have put a lot of time into this, and the quality is there as well. So performing live, I'm sure that's a completely different animal for you.
Yes.
What stands out to you when you perform live? What's something you like to do? Do you like to interact with the audience a lot?
I try to focus on the interaction more than anything else. The way I see it is I'm going on stage to entertain people. They might not even care about my music, but if I can put on enough of a show and put out enough energy and show enough like communication with the audience and stuff like that, that might draw people to check out my music at the very least. And if not, we all had a good time. That's really where it is for me. It's this whole music endeavor is more of an experience for me than like a business tactic. I'm not trying to make money off of this. I've always told people my music will always be free. There will never be a time where it's like, no, you have to pay for my album. Like, even if I have only CDs out for some strange reason, if you ask me for a CD, I will 99% give you one unless you owe me like $700. And I might have to think twice about it.
So with this coming indie rap showcase at Paradox Emporium, that's on Route 50 in Bradley, if people aren't familiar, who else is playing with you that day? And what, if for people that maybe have never gone to like a rap showcase or a rap event, what can they expect?
Okay, so it's going to be me as the headliner, and I'm co-headlining with another very, very talented rapper from Centralia, Illinois. His name is Zactier, and he makes Eminem-esque type music. I don't want to compare him to Eminem because he's very different, but he has a very hard style about what he does. It's very different from what I do, but his quality and his lyricism and everything are top notch. I really, really like his music, and I think it's going to go somewhere. So that's why I was like, you should co-headline with me. That's why the name for it is the Outliers of Hip Hop, because his recent album had a song called The Outlier. His recent album was all about going to the moon and staying there and then being called back. It's got a really cool like sci-fi vibe to it while still staying like hard and in like typical rap roots. And I really dig that. But aside from Zactier being the co-headliner, I've got Holden, who is one of actually Zach's friends. They have a record label kind of thing going for him, and they call it Reality Check Entertainment. So Holden is one of his artists from that label, and he's going to be there. He does more of like an R&B. He's got a bassist, and he sings. He's
cool.
Really talented. Me and him are actually working right now, very beginning phases of doing a cover for No Diggity by Blackstreet. I think it's going to be phenomenal. I cannot wait to record it.
Cool.
And then outside of those two, he's a local. His name's AG Star. He's done stuff for, he did the first festival, and he does a lot of stuff locally. He's released 2 albums. His music's very conscious, very rooted as well. I can't compare him to anything. He's a very, very talented man, and I'm excited to have him at the show. And then we also have He Is I. He's another local producer and rapper, and I think he's kind of just getting started, but he's already got a whole lot of like talent for being at a beginning phase. And he has actually, from my understanding, his studio is like right next door. But
oh, really?
Yeah, it's right over here somewhere.
Oh, you know what? I wonder if there is a spot on Schuyler where a lot of bands and other artists have their practice spaces.
Oh, yeah?
It's right across the street from the Majestic.
Yeah, he said it was by the theater. So
okay, I bet. And one time, one of the bands that has their practice space there is Carrying Torches. In fact, we recorded an episode in their practice space there. And I remember some of the members of Carrying Torches were showing me around the building a little bit. And they're like, yeah, this is so-and-so's room. And this is, so-and-so's room. And I remember they talked about someone being like along the lines of being a rapper and also a podcaster, I think, too. So maybe that's where
could be
he possibly has his space. Because there is at least one like studio space over there. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's where he's at. Yeah.
Could be several others. So there's a lot of talent in this town when it comes to hip hop. And I don't think they get enough attention.
Well, I think it's just like anything else. There's so many communities within the community.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, like if that's something you're not really into or on your radar, you kind of miss it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just hard to get the word out, So
sure
like, obviously that's one of the points of the podcast is just to just kind of bring up like, oh, you might not have known this, but there's actually a rap scene in Kankakee.
Yeah, and it's starting to thrive, I think. I really think it's starting to get a little bit of a spotlight.
I mean, I'm learning more about it right now with you. So like there's a lot of things, a lot of these artists I have never heard of. All of them, in fact, I've never heard of. So like that's awesome. That's really cool to hear that I've always known there's been a scene for it. I've just never.
They don't peer their head very often.
Yeah. Like I said, it's just, everyone kind of does their own thing. And sometimes our paths cross and other times they don't. So, but this is cool. So when is that showcase then? When is that show?
It's not until June 22nd.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of time. I still have practicing to get in. I'm trying to give all the guys that I have on the lineup time to get their shows planned out and everything they want to do together, maybe release songs that they could practice for that aren't out yet or any of that stuff. And this is my first time setting up an event like that, actually putting together an entire show. And I mean, I told them, bear with me because I'm just kind of I don't know what I'm doing really. I'm just doing what I can, trying to make the vision come to life.
Sure, definitely. Well, as long as it's okay with you, I want to play Bipolar on the show right now. And then we can come back and we can kind of talk about Bipolar a little bit. And
I'd love to.
Anything else. So
yes, sir.
Cool.
Got me feeling so up and then I'm feeling down. No, I can never chill, I always gotta find some. So I won't take my time and try to figure out what's wrong. What's the deal? Hurry up, come on. Smack, slam, that damn baby's mad again. Yes, I messed it up, sure enough, yes I did. Oh man, what I do, I guess I should have thought this through. It's not ovulation, it's my obligation to unpack her frustrations until we're back into our station square one. Give up, go down, get up, you know that us. Gonna get high, gonna get higher, gonna get high, gonna get higher, gonna get high, gonna get higher, gonna get high. Got me feeling so up and then I'm feeling down. No, I can never chill, I always gotta find some. So I won't take my time and try to figure out what's wrong. What's the deal? Hurry up, come on, hiya! Oh God, baby's mad again, guess I beat the odds. Oh God, yeah. Told her take a nappy, now she isn't happy. Now I'm trying not to get hit. I never meant to let you down. I did a lot of acting now. Bring it back down, bring it back now, bring it back down, bring it back now, bring it back. What the heck, you're looking at another new stress. A new look and that's a new move. Voodoo, dude, that's chess. I've been taking out these pawns, move on next. Hey baby, oh what's wrong? We can sit back, do the damn thing all night. We can get down, do the dirty, make it feel right, you know.
Bipolar by Dubble from his new album Kaleidoscope. We're here with Dubble, Shane Whitlock, right now on Kankakee Podcast. Let's talk about Bipolar. And I don't know, when I first heard the song, this was the first song you sent to me actually via email. And one of the first things that came to my mind was Gorillaz.
Yeah.
Hearing this song. What was the inspiration behind Bipolar?
Gorillaz.
Literally Gorillaz.
Mostly it was Gorillaz and Oliver Tree and 21 Pilots. There's a lot of 21 Pilots in Spain.
That's the other one I was thinking of.
I wanted to we've kind of grazed it a little bit, but I don't like two songs sounding the same, and I will create like a thing to go after in my songs. Like a concept or something. And if I fail miserably at it, I still put it out to dry. I still put it out so everybody can see it, because it's still me growing as an artist. And I feel like people like seeing that type of stuff sometimes. And it kind of gives people a whole, there's so many different things to stick to in my album. And that's why with Bipolar, I was like, I want to make something that's more poppy, more like radio play-ish, something that might sit well on ears of people who don't listen to rap, people who are more into pop music and things like that. So I just went at it. I have this whole notebook that I write just constantly in. Like, my writing process is strange. And there was one set of lyrics that just really meant something to me. And I wanted to put that all in a track together, but make it fun, even though it wasn't the most fun concept, because that whole song is about me having mood swings and having problems in relationships and stuff like that, and just going through the motions of life. And I make it sound like, I don't know, I'm walking down the street screaming happy things to people. It's just, I don't know, there's a really uppy tone about it.
I've always gravitated towards music like that. I often think of, one of my favorite bands still to this day is Real Big Fish.
Oh yeah.
Who's a ska punk band, and their sound is very happy sounding, but the lyrics are usually the polar opposite. And so you listen to it and you're like, wow, talk about two things
this song
clashing.
Made me smile earlier.
Right? It's like the melody tells me to be happy, but the lyrics tell me I need to be miserable.
Right.
But what's funny is the effect for me is that it ends up making me happy.
Right.
Even though the content of the song, the lyrical content is not happy at all. And bipolar is also just kind of like a perfect song title to have in here because the whole album, as you said, no song sounds alike. I mean, there's one song in here, I think it's Nostalgia.
Yes.
It's very trippy sounding.
It's trippy, it's traumatic, it's a very dark and like I don't want to say touching, but it's a very personal song. That was the one I wanted to throw on there, so people were like, I could see the sensitive side of S Dubble, like the more like the darker side of it. People often ask me like, write something more serious, something that really like tackles and hits home. And I was like, one day I just went to the studio and I actually didn't write any lyrics for that song. That was all just I just went at it.
To your mind?
Yeah,
I just went
with the flow of the beat. I mean, I would go through it. I'd record a bunch of stuff. There'd be missing parts. And I'd go back through it. It was like, you know what? This type of sound would fit here. So I took that sound and put lyrics that fit into that whole story. And I made a whole thing. But everything in that song are as dark as it is. It's a true story.
Wow. What is that story?
So,
if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah. So when I was probably about 12, me and a friend, even though my mother told me never go down to the river and hang out at Prairie Farm, I'm too young to be doing that alone. We went down to the river and we were there with his brother and we went swimming in the river, and two young boys joined me and him and his brother and I to go swimming in the river, and we were all just having a good time. And then me and my friend looked back and the two kids were gone, and his brother was trying to find them, and they drowned. It was terrible. And we started walking back up towards front, and we saw these two fire trucks drive by like fast as heck. I remember thinking like, I don't know why there's fire trucks. We're not by the road. Because at the time we didn't realize they drowned. We thought they got out or something like that, because they were just gone. We didn't hear any struggle or anything like that. So then we turned back, I was like, what's going on? And then there were the mother of the boys was there crying. There were police officers. It was tragic. It really was. It was heartbreaking, but it's something that's always, I don't know, sat heavy on my mind just to experience that as a child. It's maybe not like the most, it's pretty traumatic. It's
very traumatic. That sticks with you the rest of your life. And especially at that young of an age to actually I suppose you didn't see them drown.
No, we didn't see it.
But you were still there, and it was kind of like experiencing death.
Right. Yes. It was all over that day, and it never. I don't know. I don't think I ever absorbed it. I don't think I ever processed it until I was older, and that's when I was like, man, I can't believe I had to witness something like that. But I decided to air it out and put it on a track one day, because it's not something you just talk about to people, But with music, you could put that thoughts and ideas like that into a song, and you could talk about it without actually speaking to anyone.
Wow, that definitely gives me a whole different view of that song before. Because my first reaction was listening to that song was just, wow, this is really trippy. And I was like, this is kind of weird. But now I have a whole different thought to the song, and I actually want to go back and listen to it now. And I'm sure it'll give me a whole different meaning, knowing the actual intent behind the song. So yeah, this is an album filled with all kinds of different genres.
Yeah, you go from that dark stuff straight to Donkey Kong.
Right. A Kaleidoscope by S Dubble, which is spelled, and you can see this in the show notes too. It's ES:DUBBLE.
So if you skip the colon when you type it into search bars, it still comes up.
Does it? Yeah. Okay. So just so you know, that is how it's spelled. Kaleidoscope is available on all streaming platforms,
everywhere,
right?
Yes.
Yeah. And do you have, like, if someone wants a physical copy,
I have a handful of deluxe editions, or what I'm going to call them. They're in a jewel case and they have full art. But next month, I'm going to print out, I don't know, good 100 paper sleeve disc copies for just free, just to hand out and try to promote myself a little bit.
And I imagine if people go to the show on June 22nd, you're going to have some physical copies.
Yeah, I'll have physical copies of this album and my last one, and I'll have shirts and kaleidoscopes that are hand painted by me.
That's awesome. Yeah. Like those are the kaleidoscopes, are those circular things you spin, right?
Well, it's got like a lens on the front.
Or you twist it, yes.
Yeah, and you move it around and it just distorts everything and makes it look all pretty and sparkly.
Yeah, I loved those as a kid.
Yeah, they're cool.
Yeah, that was always so cool. This is what it looks like when you're on acid.
Yeah, basically. Don't do drugs, kids.
Don't do it. Just look in this kaleidoscope instead. And obviously your artwork mimics that look too, which is really cool, really fitting. Anything else you want to plug?
No, I think we covered it all. We got my album that just came out, my Spotify, my music's everywhere. I have a show coming up. If you want merch, feel free to hit me up. It's nothing crazy, but if you want to support what I'm doing and you would like to see what I can do with a little bit more funding in this artistry, I'm here for you.
Cool. And just people can follow you on Facebook. Yes. Do you have an Instagram as well?
I do have an Instagram. It would be at Professor, spelled just like Professor, _Dubble.
Okay.
Dubble.
Cool. Awesome. Well, Shane, this has been fun, man.
Thanks, Jake. It was great being here talking about all this.
Yeah. Thank you. That concludes this episode of Kankakee Podcast. I'm Jake LaMore. Thank you so much for listening. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Kankakee Podcast. Shout out to Stephanie Vanderweide for supporting the show each month through Patreon. If you want your name announced on a future episode, you can sign up at patreon.com/Kankakee Podcast. Special thanks to our sponsors, Chicago Dough Company, Noble Dairy Queen Stores, Frank's Appliance Center and Sleep Source, Pigosh Engineering, King Music, Little Me Studio, Taco John's, D. Westfall Jewelers, and Edward Jones Financial Advisor Adam Elroy. Kankakee Podcast is produced by the fine team at Pathfinder, a full-service marketing agency in downtown Kankakee. Learn more at yourpathfinder.io. Our theme song is by Lupe Carroll.
This river carries on.